All right, so let's demonstrate this by downloading the code from GitHub. I'm going to download the entire repository Azure Batch samples. Now we saw there's a number of samples in this besides the hello world, but for this example we can just demonstrate compiling and running the hello world sample. So I downloaded the zip file to my local and I unzip it. Now of course if you have Git you can obviously clone the repository and do it that way. Now inside of this unzipped folder is the various folders, and we can get into getting started. We can see that Hello World does exist. Now you will need a Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code for this. I do have Visual Studio 2017 installed, so I'm going to open this project in Visual Studio 2017, but I do hear great things about Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to hopefully test that out later on. So let's go into the downloaded codes repository. I'm going to navigate into the code here into getting started, and then Hello World project specifically, open up the solution file. So that opens within our Visual Studio environment. Now I'm going to do a compile of this just to ensure that all of the dependencies have been built. Okay, so we waited until the code was loaded. It says that it has. I'm going to say build solution, or you can hit F6. And we can see that it doesn't take too long for both the common project and also the Hello World project to compile. Now we did review the code in the last video, so we're not going to go through it line by line again. We can see there is a settings file for this code, and it does tell you the number of nodes, the virtual machine, instance size, and the pool ID, etc. So you can have batch and job specific settings in that file. And then there's this file for account specific settings. You're going to need to go to the Azure portal and go into your batch account and grab the account name and the account key, and then go and grab the storage account name, a storage account key, etc. I'm blurring this out so that you don't see my keys, but these keys shouldn't work after today anyways. So I'm going to build it again based on that updated key. I'm going to hit rebuild, and we can see it compiles. Now the question of course is, sure it compiles, but does it actually work? So I'm going to hit either F5 or the green triangle there. Now I did put a breakpoint in here so I can step through the code, and we can see the part of the common project which loads the configuration. Unfortunately, it's looking for the JSON file to be in a specific directory. So I actually do have to copy the account settings JSON from the common project into the Hello World project. Now of course we could set up our build scripts in such a way that the account settings JSON goes into the proper place, or change the code to look for it in the common project, but out of laziness it's easier just to copy it. Run it again, and this time it's able to load the values for that account settings JSON. So it's loaded it, and then we've run it through the configuration builder, and now we're going to kick off the job in the asynchronous way. I'm still stepping through the code, and it's of course going to write to the console a few lines where it's going to grab a credential because of the batch account needs to have a batch service needs a credential in order to interact with it. So passing in the URL and the account name, account key returns a credential. This is interesting. This is a retry provider policy, and you can see that it's the exponential retry provider, and it's basically going to see if the job gets retried 5 seconds exponentially, which is interesting. So we can see that as we step through it, the console has output all of these keys, and it's going to run. Now this takes a few minutes to run. Okay, so it's right now it's uploading the job into the batch account. If we go over to Azure portal, so we're going to have to go into the Azure portal and go into the batch service. And if I try to open in Batch Explorer, you do have to have the software installed. I'm going to download the software just out of interest to see what this batch job looks like in the Batch Explorer. So I'll download that in the meantime. But if you look at the Azure portal here, you can see that the program is still running. So let's install the Batch Explorer. It asks to have access outside the firewall. I'm going to have to log into my Azure account. So this is my Azure account credential. So this is the Azure Batch Explorer. Now we can see here that it's pulled my Azure account in once I logged in, and I can see my batch account, the AZSG batch account, and we can see that how things have been going so far. Now I've tested this job once and it took a few minutes to run. It takes quite a few minutes to run actually. And the job started and complete. But right now I have it running. We have it running again. So we can see that this is still waiting for tasks to complete. And this is the way that we're going to get insights. So we have the job, and we can see that the job has one task, task 1, active. Task is currently active and there's no output to view yet. So we're here waiting. It's taken 4 minutes so far. Here waiting for the task to execute. Can navigate back up to the summary view. We can see that there's one job queued, and that's the only job, and it hasn't succeeded or failed yet. It's still in that state. So this is how we get insights into what the batch is doing behind the scenes. We can see that the job has started again. So I ran it once and now I'm running it a second time. And it's been running for a few minutes. One has been started, one is completed. If we look at the pools, select a pool from the list, we can see that we have 2 nodes part of the pool. Remember, we did that in the settings. It's going to cost me 25 cents an hour for that type of pool. So we can see that the nodes are dedicated, transitioning, and now we just have to wait for the task to complete. It does take a few minutes. The task is running. I'm now looking for output files. Ran for 3 seconds and completed. Okay, so if we go back up here, it says task completed. If I go to the command line, it says standard out hello world from the batch hello world sample. So this is the output of the task we uploaded to Azure Batch Service. Press return to exit. So the code is successfully completed, and it took a few minutes to get it set up, and it takes about 3 seconds of runtime in terms of the actual work that we asked it to do. It's a very basic hello world program. So the Azure Batch Explorer, really interesting way to see your tasks in motion. If you've got a really complicated job with hundreds of tasks or thousands of tasks, then you'll definitely see the value of being able to peel away under the hood and see what your nodes are doing and how busy they are and how close they are to completion.